Hello, I'm Marilyn Hemingway, and welcome to A Gathering Place. I said, I'm stepping back because we have young voices who want to be heard and they're moving on something.
Branding is really important to you and your business.
Even a basic type of technology, you learn it all.
And people are
Good question.
Hey, Marilyn, still can't hear you for some reason.
Can you hear me?
There we go. We can hear you now.
Can you hear me?
Yep. Can hear you now.
Now I can't hear you.
Oh.
Hold on. We're going back here too.
All right.
All right, can you try that? 1, 2, 3.
Yep. You can hear me now?
There you go. Who knows, y'all? We were in the back prepping, and he could hear me now. He can't hear me, so I had to change my speakers and mics. But that's all good. We work with it and roll right on into it because we got a lot to talk about today.
We do. We do. There's a lot going on.
Yeah, so I don't even know where we want to start. Hopefully Jamarr Brown will join us from Texas because we know we got to have him in to talk about what the hell is going on in Texas.
Yeah,
so hopefully Jamarr can
join
join us. But a lot of what's going on nationally starts in Texas. So what we're talking about here, Roe versus Wade, Miranda Rights, no knock warrants. I don't think people realize, Brandon, how serious that no knock warrants ruling is. We definitely want to talk about that. And what's the gun rights? What's going on with that? But let's start with no knock warrants. Well, no, because I gotta find a map. Let's start with the big subject: Roe versus Wade.
Yeah.
Why don't we start there and why it's just bigger than? Jamarr just sent me a text so he's on his way in. It's bigger than just fetuses. It's about self-autonomy, your bodily autonomy. It's about privacy, which leads to other things. And Clarence Thomas has already said they're already gunning for other rulings. So go ahead and start, Brandon, and I'm going to go find that map.
Okay. Just like you said, this is, I call this the gateway ruling, right? Because it's the gateway into them dismantling all of the other precedents that secure our rights as a body of people in this country. All the protections that we are comfortable with now, even when we talk about what Senator Corcoran said recently about what did he say? Nexus Plessy versus Ferguson, or Brown versus Board of Education. Those two landmark decisions, excuse me, changed the lay of the land to make things equal in this country, especially when we talk about Brown versus Board of Education. That's what allowed us to have equal education for students of color and white students. That's what opened the door for immigration into our schoolhouses. So now what are we going to do? We're going to make it legal for us to say, if you look this way or you're from this community, you can legally have better education than from the other side of town. Right? Are we going to start saying that if you run a school, you can legally say we're not going to allow Black or Mexican students to attend our schools? Like, these guys are literally attacking the fabric that we've worked for the last 70 years to weave together. State Representative Jermaine Johnson from Richland County. He said he retweeted that image, a screenshot of Corcoran's tweet saying next, now do Plessy versus Ferguson or Brown versus Board of Education. And Jermaine said, oh, the hoods are off now. And I remember a conversation that one of the Klansmen in Georgia had with, what's his name, Louis Farrakhan, where he said, you know, we're not going to be riding the streets in hoods anymore. Now we're going to be in Congress. We're going to be in the sheriff's department. We're going to be in banking. You know, we're going to look different in how we attack. And this is that day that they spoke of almost 50 years ago. And I'm not race baiting here. I'm literally calling it how I see it. Because what is the other explanation on rolling back the advances of our nation 50 years? What other explanation is there for us attacking groups of people and limiting their rights to choose what happens to their body, especially when you're the party that says you stand for freedom and liberty? Freedom and liberty does not look like you forcing a woman to have the child of her rapist, right? And then saying, now you deal with it. Freedom and liberty does not look like you giving someone or excluding poor children, minority children from having quality education. Freedom and liberty doesn't look like you restricting our rights and access, and then forcing us to deal with it. Like, this is completely counter and contradictory to what they say they are. But we have to do like Maya Angelou said: when they show you who they are, believe them the first time. And this isn't the first time they've shown us who they are. This is what, number 100 on the list if you've been counting over the last 10 years. Like, we have to address this issue of the attack from the right on our liberties head on and accordingly. Otherwise, we're going to look up and not recognize the country we're living in, and we're not going to recognize it because we're going to be strapped to the bottom of this sinking ship. And the last thing I would say, and I tweeted this earlier today, like, when they go low, we go high strategy is not working for us. I remember when I was on the playground in elementary and middle school and the bullies would come and harass us, my grandfather and my uncle told me that if I didn't clock them on the chin, they were going to keep coming after me over and over and over again. And it wasn't until they saw that I had just as much fight in me as they had in them, that's when they started backing down. And if we as Democrats continue to roll over and allow the Republican assault on our country, on our democracy, on our civil liberties to continue and to escalate, we are going to continue to be ran over and bullied by the right. We can no longer go high when they go low. When they go low, we need to knee them in the face, and maybe that will get them to back down. How you doing, brother Jamarr?
Hey, how are you?
Good. I like that shirt.
Well, thank you. Well, we're talking about people going low, huh?
Oh man, and they're digging ditches so they can go lower.
Pretty much. I mean, if I'll jump in here and, we can talk about, the Roe decision. This extremism has been going on for decades, quite frankly. And there's been a movement, to eliminate people's right to choose. It's been a movement to restrict abortion and restrict access to health care. I also think that it's particularly interesting that in the same week, the ruling came out about guns. And so we're seeing now that we live in a country where guns are actually have more rights than women in this country. Guns are valued or prioritized over health care in this country. And I think that is absolutely devastating. I think that there are a couple things that we have to do and some fights that we have ahead. There are folks who called for President Biden to use federal lands where he has permission to, and I think there might be some legality things there. So I think that there's a space where we need to, in this moment, not only talk about going to vote. Voting is a part of the solution, but voting is not the ultimate solution. And also, too, we've got to be in this fight in a way like never before, because we can't wait on a cavalry.
We can't.
To be quite frank with you, I don't think a cavalry's coming. And so it's on to us. And so there are two things that we have to do in this moment. Number one is, how do we protect communities and make sure that people have care? That's a way that we can show up. We are the party that is delivering for people for the most part in a lot of ways, right? And so we've got to make sure that we use the power we do have, and how do we navigate the systems, what we do have. So that may be some things that President Biden can do. He can direct his administration to do, so that people still feel in this moment that they can access healthcare. One of the things that we did in Texas, our state party chair and vice chair put a letter out to elected officials. So we included sheriffs, constables, district attorneys, mayors across the state, asking for them to not criminalize people who are trying to access abortion and healthcare. And so we're seeing that trickle in, where we're getting announcements from DA's offices that they will not do that. That's the thing that folks should be doing across their states, is asking those elected officials, because there's some legal ways to get out of some of this. So that's a huge part of it, making sure that in this very moment that we're able to support people accessing healthcare, because that's how you show up for people. Number two, I do think it's important to talk about what this means for the election, what this means for how candidates campaign around these particular issues. What does it mean to say that we need to expand our Senate majority? We do need to abolish the filibuster. It needs to go. We're never going to be at a 60 vote majority anymore. Our country is too polarized. I don't think one party will get 60 seats anymore. We've just gone through redistricting in a lot of parts of the country. So a lot of the House seats are probably up at stake, also as well. And so that's a huge piece. Also, that's important, that we've got to fight in this election like never before to, as you all probably have heard me say, earn the governing power. Mm-hmm. So we've got to elect governors. You've got to elect people like Beto O'Rourke and Stacey Abrams.
All right.
You've got to elect people like Sherry Beasley in North Carolina.
Yeah.
John Fetterman in Pennsylvania. We've got to expand that majority, at least get to 52, 53 seats in some cases. And also make sure that, district attorneys, these folks make, absolute critical decisions, also as well. And so I think those are two key areas in where, at least from my perspective, Democrats have to show up. We have to show up in governing now. We can't wait to expand the majority to govern. What are the things that we can do right now to move the needle? And then also the election to expand that work. Because I don't think that the solution here is let's just codify Roe, because you can always repeal a law if you lose the majority. The Supreme Court can always overturn a law if there's a lawsuit. So there's meaningful things. We need to think about this in a way that we can make this last for 30, 40 years in the way that they've been fighting for the last 40, 50 years to get to this pivotal point. I'll just say it's on me that, Donald Trump got to appoint 3 justices. All of them lied. And there should be some consequence to that, lying before Congress. But that's another conversation for today. And so I think that that's what we've got to start doing, is showing up for people. And a lot of our elected officials around Texas have been stepping up to say that they're going to help women and families who are accessing abortion and health care. And we're grateful for that. Rallies and marches and speeches are fine. We've seen that around Texas and around the country. I think it's great that people are coalescing. I think it's great that people are building coalitions, but how are we moving those coalitions to power? And one of them is governing and advocacy, and 2, winning elections.
You better teach, Brother Brown. And, everything that I got from you just now was we need to have a broad and deep strategy that takes us into a long-term offense against what the Republicans are doing. And I wrote this down while you were talking, because this is where I think that our coalition under the big tent that is the Democratic Party, where we've been falling short, is it shouldn't have to happen to you before it becomes something that you care about, right? For our white women allies in our tent, they shouldn't have to come for your reproductive rights before you join forces with us to fight back. For our LGBTQ community, they shouldn't have to come for your civil liberties to marry who you love before you join forces with the rest of us to fight back. For Black folks, they shouldn't have to come for your voting rights before you join forces with everyone else to fight back, because we're all in this together. If they come for me, you better believe you're next. And now that we know what their strategy is, and we've known this for a very long time, when are we going to work together to push back against the assault? When are we going to sit down and have a strategy and then get on one accord so we can move forward in that strategy, right? And I'm so glad and proud that Texas has your leadership, Jamarr, because I know that you have that strategic mindset. I'm honored Marilyn is on here because I know she has that strategic mindset, but there's so many strategic leaders on the ground that are not listened to how they're supposed to be. And we miss out on opportunities to gain ground because somebody felt like, who you think you are? And I'm in this position. I should know better. You should go back and sit down. I'm the whatever, and not listening to the generals in the room. And I say generals because this is literally a war that we're waging for the future of our democracy and the future of our society. Because when our children come up, what are they going to get? How will they be treated? What future will they have here in America? Will they have to go somewhere else to be free citizens in a free society? And if we're not looking at it that way, we're going to lose every single time. Y'all keep going high when they go low, and I'll see y'all on the other side.
Well, but that's becoming problematic too, because France, people haven't been paying attention. Last week, the alt-right in France basically have taken over parliament. So they've become the majority in parliament, forcing Macron to negotiate with them. That's not what you want to see happen. We talk about America being exceptional, which on a personal level, America has not been exceptional for quite a while now. But we're still a world leader. We're still a superpower, which means we have undue influence. So where America goes, other countries are going also. So where are our children going to go if we lose our human rights? So going to what you were saying, Brandon, this isn't necessarily LGBTQIA rights. This isn't necessary abortion rights. This isn't necessary voting rights. This is human rights. That's what we have to get in our head. All of these rights that are under attack and that we are losing are human rights, civil rights. And once we get that in our head, then we have to be strategic on how to retain this. They're coming for these things because it's about power and greed. They want to retain power. And I'm going to call it, because I've been calling it for a while. They see the writing on the wall in America that we are starting to look more like the rest of the world, majority Black and brown. So they want those who are in power, who happen to be white, wealthy males, and their families, the white women, see the writing on the wall that we're losing the birth rate. We're losing the birth rate. So what can we do to maintain power? Put in an apartheid system so that a very small amount of people control everything. It's happening right before our eyes. And unless we get knowledge and get smart, what we're seeing happening is going to continue happening. And we have got to ramp up our efforts very quickly.
Well, I have a few thoughts to that. and let's just name the thing too, that this country is built and married to white supremacy and patriarchy. Let's just name that part. And I think that's where, where Brandon was talking about, like with white women or, folks waiting until their rights are restricted. That's what this country has been married to for a very long time and still is. And that is still driving a lot of the decisions around when to attack and what to attack and what's going to happen to people and what the real impact of people are going to be. So I think that's number one. I think number two, there are people who have moved to action. Everybody's fighting about what action it should be. That's what the other side wants us to do, is fight each other. And so while we're fighting each other and duking it out, they're behind the closed doors doing what just happened. Because we're all fighting because this community is against this community, I call it oppression Olympics. That's what we've been playing for the past 100 years. It's Black people are hurting more than brown people, or brown people are hurting more than this people, or LGBTQ, or, etc. And all of our human rights, as you framed it, Marilyn, are under attack. And if you're not a cisgender white man in this country, you're under attack. That's for the white women too. And so when people see that our struggles are abounding each other in how they're executing and how they're governing, that's also got to frame our mind to get smarter about it. I don't have time to fight with other people of color. I don't have time to fight with Native people, LGBTQ people, because all of us are going to lose our rights, and we're going to go right back to the 1800s. Shame on John Cornyn for that tweet yesterday about Brown versus Board of Education, where it instituted rights for education in our country. And obviously we've seen that education is under attack. That is by design when they're trying to pull history books out of libraries, when they're trying to pull information, because they were celebrating Juneteenth last week. Many Republicans were saying, Happy Juneteenth. But then the next day, they'll go and tell you what book you can and can't read, what books can and cannot be in a library, what you can access and what you cannot access, and what teachers can teach and what they should not teach. And the reason that they want to ban books is not about coercing people. What they want to ban books because white people don't want to be guilty and they don't want to be accountable. Oh, and that's what's happening here. And there's a lack of accountability, and these folks have gone to the right. So there was a member of Congress, I don't remember the lady's name, but she literally got up at a rally yesterday and said Friday's decision was protecting white lives. She said the quiet part out loud. And so if people don't see it at this point, then you're choosing not to see it. Because they basically, and when we choose not to see it, it also gives them more power. So we've also got to be smarter. And we have to be at a place where, as the old folks will teach you, to call a spade a spade. And the old folks will also teach us that if they go low, you go low, low, low to the flow. And that's just what it is. And we're at a war for human rights here. And I'm not trying to be divisive and all that, but we're at a war for our human rights and our dignity. And sometimes our sanity, also as well, as somebody whose phone has been going off all week about these things. And, to be quite honest, I mean, when this draft decision got leaked, we knew. And so some of this stuff is not surprising, at some point. And so we've got to get clear about a stronger plan of action, a longer term strategy, but also how we center the people that are most impacted in that and not center the people that are most guilty. And that's what we tend to do in this movement, because I'm not trying to guilt anybody, but I'm just going to say it was dangerous well before 2016. But 2016 election, when one president got to appoint 3 justices, that has flipped what the court looks like. And what people don't understand is 1, 2, 3 seats in a lot of cases can flip what a governing or a judicial, in this case, what a body that is making decisions on behalf of millions of people, what that looks like. In Texas, we're down 8 or 9 seats. A lot of state legislatures are very close. The congressional U.S. House is very close. The Senate, it's all very close. And so the decisions are usually in the hands of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people. But those 1 to 5 people could make decisions that impact us for decades. And that's what we're seeing here.
Well, I, for one, if you can hear me, I, for one, believe we are at the point where we need to change systems. And I'm just going to put it out here. I've been saying this in meetings and stuff, but publicly, we need a parliamentarian system. That's just my thoughts on that, so that parties are forced to negotiate. Our our legislative system is so broken. These parties are not really working together, talking together. One is just so radical on the alt-right side. They're not operating as a party. Some people say a cult, but what we do know, they're not operating as a party. So where do you even start to negotiate to have laws that benefit the majority of the people? They're not even there. They are rapidly taking apart the Constitution. But it really does come down to the people. What you were just saying, Jamarr, is who we elect. We've got to elect people that stand for the Constitution, that stand for the United States of America, and not just their individual rights, their individual states. And we've been saying this for a while now. We are at an inflection point in history. What side of history will you choose to belong to?
Yeah, and I mean that's absolutely right, Marilyn. And I think, you have one party that is willing to govern, you have another that's not willing to govern, but they will use the government for their own power and greed, like you mentioned before. And so, and it's going to take a lot of new leaders in order to fix the problems that we have and a lot of the rules. That's why you need to get rid of, like I mentioned earlier, you have to get rid of the filibuster. You have to get rid of these things that are hindering progress at this point. And that filibuster is an example, but there's many other things. Folks have been talking over the weekend about term limits for Supreme Court justices and things like that.
Or increasing the number of Supreme Court justices.
Expanding the court.
I really think people don't understand the urgency of this time.
Mm-hmm.
We can't rely on civility of working across the aisle, because one side of the aisle has clearly, for quite a while now, said, we're not working with you. We want it our way or no way. You cannot negotiate with that.
Yeah. I mean,
Brandon, you're Mr. Calm. What are your thoughts?
And Maya Angelou said, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. They have shown us over and over and over
and over again.
And for some reason, we don't believe them.
Yeah, we still have people who are like, we can work. Well, Joe Manchin is a prime example. Joe Manchin said he could bring 10 Republicans with him. I'm still looking for one Republican that's going to work with Joe Manchin to protect voting rights and all of those bills we tried to get passed, the infrastructure bill that we tried to get passed. Where are those? Where's one? Where's one? Yet they're taking credit for everything that we've passed. They're taking credit because they know when it comes down to it, the guy on the corner is going to say, well, my street got fixed. Let me go vote for my senator.
And Joe Manchin voted for a couple of these nominees.
Absolutely. And that's what
you got to name that. So if he went to their side, he didn't bring anybody over to our side.
Right. And that's the thing. When Marilyn was saying she's still looking for one, well, that one is Joe Manchin. Like, if we're going to call it how we see it, call the spade a spade, that is who he is. And he's literally just carrying that Democratic label so that he stays in the room when they're talking strategy so that he can continue to put the monkey wrench in the spokes. Like, he is no friend of ours. He's not even a friend of West Virginia. He is a friend of the folks who have bought and paid him off, considering the oil and gas company, the coal industry, and so on and so forth. Joe Manchin is not a friend. Now, when it comes down to, and here in South Carolina, we had a candidate by the name of Crystal Matthews, who's running for the U.S. Senate against Tim Scott. She's in a runoff election right now. She called for or put out a statement. In her statement, one of the lines was that she would fight for the expansion of the court and also term limits, 12-year term limits for the justices. But our folks need to understand that stuff does not happen with the snap of a finger. Like, some of these movements that we're calling for, they require a convention of states in order to do it. Like, we have to amend our U.S. Constitution if we're going to make these types of significant changes to our Supreme Court. The most important thing that I've heard and read since the decision was made official was a very simple tweet from Elder Brown, and he said, "Elections have consequences," and that is where we are. And we have to understand that elections have consequences, and not just elections for federal government, but for our local government, for our state house and our state senate, because they are the ones who laid the groundwork for us to have this split Congress that we have now. They're the ones who gerrymandered our districts so that even when you have a state with 36% minority representation, you have 15% representation at our federal government level. You know, like we have to get back, and I'll keep saying this for the rest of this hour that we're talking, we got to get back to the broad reaching and deep strategy with a long-term vision, because they have outworked us, y'all. What we're seeing today is the results of 2.5 decades worth of strategy from the Republican side of the line. And now we are scrambling to figure out how to catch up, how to keep up, and how to defend. And it's hard to do that when you've been behind the 8 ball for 2.5 decades.
This is where I fault the party, Brandon. And I'm just going to put it out there, because you've said it, that we've known about this. We have known about this. In the grassroots, many of us have been out here in the fight, but we've been dismissed. And what has ended up happening on my part is I feel the Democratic Party, and I consider myself an independent Democrat, y'all. I am not about to vote for the Republicans because they trying to suppress my vote. Let's just even start there, and all the other issues, okay? I'm not going to vote Republican. But I do not feel that the Democratic Party is fighting for me. I don't think they're in the fight. I don't think if I told it to a local Democrat, I'm not talking just a national, even in redistricting, we had 3 county council members, African-American and Democrats, literally were giving up a seat. And we're trying to tell people we're going to have more power because we're going to have 2 supermajority Black districts. The math does not add up, because when the county council votes, they're not giving extra weight to 2 supermajority Black districts. They're counting 1 vote.
That's right.
1 freaking vote. And we sat there and told them, why are you giving up a vote that you don't have to give up? And they were arguing us down. We took the fight to them. And in one meeting, I told the county chair, who was one of the African Americans, I said, I do not elect people to be accommodating. I elect them to take the fight to the others. And what do I mean by fight? I'm not talking physical fight, because I know the Republicans will hear this and go, oh, Lord, she's citing an insurrection.
They like to spin it. They like to spin stuff.
Yeah, they like to spin it. No, the fight is you are in there representing the people, and you are speaking our voice, because we are not there to speak our voice. And you've got to keep pushing that. And we were not getting that. Honestly, I do not feel that the Democratic Party, for whatever reason, maybe it's too much money, maybe they're too comfortable. You know, we could talk about that too. Where is the fight? And that's the issue with Joe Manchin. Yes, Joe Manchin is a problem, but doggone it, take Joe Manchin out too. Take him in the back room and whip his ass. I'm sorry, we all know what was going on. Where is the fight?
I told you. I mean, I told them last night. I was in Lubbock, Texas, and I was keynoting a Democratic dinner. And this all, was planned for months, but everything happened this week. And I told them, we got to fight with fervor here. I mean, yes, we're good people. We want people to do well. We should still want that. But at the end of the day, people made change because they were angry, and they used that anger and moved it to something constructive. So I'm not saying get angry to just be mean and divisive. I'm saying get angry be angry enough to say, we want to change. I'm angry enough that I'm not going to let it continue. And that's before they spin it too, because that's what happens. They'll point at, us and, oh, no, angry Black folk, they're just mad. What we do? And, and they play that, what do we do so well? Because we don't push back on them. A lot of times we just, oh, okay. Or like you were saying, they gave up one seat. I'm sure there's some kind of deal in there somewhere that we don't know about that we'll probably find out about. So you sometimes look, when I know a deal was cut when my community starts looking different and I wasn't a part of it, right? Or I didn't understand it, right? And so a lot of times those deals have been cut and we're so busy trying. There's a place of where we've probably taken negotiation too far. We're making deals thinking that they're going to uphold their end of the deal. They do not uphold their end of the deal, and we're left holding the bag with less power, more oppression, more economic division and separation than possible. And so that's what we've got to do, y'all. We can, as somebody just said in the comments, gaslighting, they will gaslight us. And we sit there and let them do it. Because, I don't want to be the angry Black man. And, I'm co-ED of the Texas Democratic Party. And I told somebody the other day, if y'all think I'm angry, then, whatever y'all want to talk about in y'all group chat about me, then that's fine. But I'm angry enough that I'm not going to sit here and just allow this to go on. And everybody just, oh, it's going to be okay. Or, pat me on my back, because we've been patting each other on the back. We've been giving hugs, giving love, giving emojis on social media. And what is it getting us? And that's what we've got to ask. People like all of us on this screen and other folks that are watching and other folks in communities across the country who are engaged in their communities, we're sitting up here and we can't be gaslit anymore. What I wanted to share a little bit earlier was, I think one of the key reasons that we haven't moved forward where we need to move forward is because we spend so much time fighting each other. Everybody thinks they have the answer. Everybody thinks they have the message. Everybody thinks my way or the highway. Because when we say you can't work with Republicans, that's true. But on our side, because we're Big Ten, everybody's got a different view of how we get there. At some point, you have to have a strategy, and we have to trust each other enough to go forward with this strategy, because there's the difference that sometimes our side doesn't understand is there's a strategy. Now, we may all employ some different tactics along the way, but there's one strategy. And that's what the other side does. Whether they call it falling in line, right? We fall in love, they fall in line, as the old saying is. And so we haven't even come together to say what our strategy is, but everybody's got all these answers, actions, and tactics with no strategy. Because what is all this action and money and resources? What is all this going to get us if there's not a clear direction where we're all going at the end of the day? And two, I think that we play, like I mentioned before, we play oppression Olympics. I'm worse off than you. Don't talk to me about this because you don't know, and it's all this, sort of back and forth. And, and so, ultimately at the end of the day, those are the things that we've got to consider. How do we align on a strategy? Yes, we have different perspectives. Yes, different resources in different communities. Yes, probably different thoughts in different communities. But how do we try to build those bridges to bring it together under the system that we do have, so that we get to a strategy and to a place where we are reforming a system or rebuilding a new system, whichever it is. And that's part of why we have not moved along, because if anybody follows social media, people are all over the place, quite frankly. And so if I'm somebody who wants to take action, I don't know what step to take because it's not as clear. So we've got to get clear about what our vision and what our strategy is and how are we aligning the communities and the coalitions around that, because we cannot have 10 different strategies with all of them trying to win at the same time. You can't do it.
No, I 100% agree with you, Jamarr. And before you went into that, I was just thinking about, even on the local level, how do we hold ourselves accountable to the course of action that we laid out? Because I've seen this here in South Carolina, especially after working in our state house, that our strategic goals are dismantled not by the Republicans actions, but by the actions of those within our own party. And I'll just say it. There's a representative who's running a runoff now in Williamsburg County named Caesar McKnight. And he has been the worst piece of legislator that we've had in South Carolina history, in my opinion, because not only has he worked against our own platform and our own interests, but he's aligned himself with Republicans in a way that is counterproductive to his own community. And I'm calling him by name, and he already knows that, my form of accountability in this is supporting Roger Kirby, who's running against him, because even though Roger Kirby is not a black man, he's done more for black folks than Caesar McKnight has. And this is where we have to go. Our president of the United States needs to call out Joe Manchin and hold him accountable. Our state party needs to step up when our members counteract our strategy and our strategic goals. Like, we have to hold each other accountable. We talk about the Republicans staying in lockstep with one another. That's because they know if they get out of line, they're going to be held accountable. And this is a good example. Look at Tom Rice. He's the outgoing congressman from South Carolina's 7th Congressional District. Tom Rice voted to impeach Donald Trump after the January 6th insurrection. That was a good vote, but it was counterproductive to the Republican strategy. So what did they do? They found somebody to run against him. They supported that person to run against him. They raised money, developed an infrastructure, and in a runoff with 11 people, their chosen person to hold Tom Rice accountable won that race without a runoff. Sometimes, and I know my B1 folks will say, sometimes we got to be like Harriet Tubman and shoot them. We don't have to shoot them. We just got to make sure they don't get back into office. And we have to be one accord on the strategy, hold to it. And when we step out of line of it, we have to hold ourselves and each other accountable. That's all I got to say about it.
I'll use that example to share. This is why people don't do accountability for the same thing, and not trying to give too much credit to Tom Rice, but he made a vote. The president of the United States literally broke the law, and he made a vote to impeach him, right? And this is why people don't hold people accountable, because at the end of the day, you are taught, at least in my experience, you're taught you need to just play the game and just go along to get along, and all those things. And so you get people in office who end up not doing the right thing because they're so worried about the next election. They're so worried about what's going to happen, also, as well. And so at the end of the day, I think that's what you see in a lot of elected officials, where sometimes they don't even vote on things that they agree, or they vote on things, but because everyone around them doesn't agree, then they're actually held accountable. Tom Rice got held accountable for voting for the president to impeach the president who broke the law. That's what he got held accountable for. Like, think about that. But then you have elected officials who cutting deals and letting their communities get gerrymandered, and they sit in office.
I know, because he voted.
What does that tell the voter?
Yeah, he voted for Trump like 98% of the time.
Right.
And he finally had a moral moment. They kicked him out. They took him out. Well, this is when we have to take the fight to them, is holding our officials accountable to make sure they hold to their morals. And if they don't, take them out. We need to take them out. And I think enough of us are really getting tired of the foolishness that is starting to happen. But as you both have said, we are behind the 8 ball by years. By years, we are behind this. But I'm hoping through technology and what's happening in the world right now, that will speed up that process so we can catch up and surpass what's happening. Plus, also, let me add, I do think in the long term, it's going to shake out that the Republicans have overplayed their hand. Now, but we can't wait to figure that out. we have to do what we're supposed to be doing. But I do think history will show that at this moment they've overplayed their hand also. We just can't wait for that moment. We've got to do the work.
And, this is we're playing on a chessboard here. There's many moves that need to be made, and we have to be thinking, 2 and 3 steps ahead, and we can't just plan for our next move just to get to our next move. We just have so much to do, and I think everything we've said on here is very valid. I'm just hoping that the folks who are watching and listening to this conversation here, that they are able to digest what we're trying to convey. And for those who understand what we're saying, understand what needs to be done, I hope that something that we say today motivates you to put your thought and your knowing and your experience into action. Like, there's a lot of talk about what's happening. There's a lot of anger. There's a lot of pissed off folks out here. I saw a video not too long ago about folks protesting in Greenville and mother and daughter going to jail. The protesting is a part of it, but we got to get out and spring into action, whether that is you leaving the protest and going into your neighborhood to make sure that all of your neighbors are registered to vote, even checking in on your family to make sure they're registered to vote and they participate in these upcoming elections. Whether that's you going and downloading the schedule for your county council meeting or your city council meeting so that you can plan your life accordingly to show up to those meetings, or you getting a little van together of folks to come to Columbia and sit in on session when they are having their committee meetings or subcommittee meetings to make sure your voice is heard there. Like, we have to translate our emotions into a strategy that produces the action to move us forward. If we continue to armchair quarterback and, talk about what happened yesterday, today, instead of talking about what we're going to do tomorrow, we're going to continue to be spectators in this political sport. And these guys are moving the ball forward, and we're chasing after them to no avail at this point in time. But it's not too late. I hope that anything that we say today motivates you to act, and to act now.
I'm doing a lot because I'm outside, y'all. But anyway, we are got about 10 minutes left. I do want to touch on 2 things, one of which is the no-knock warrant, which I find that to be very serious. I just want to bring that up quickly. But I also want to talk about what the hell is going on in Texas, Jamarr, because what happens in Texas, it's such a big state. A lot of what happens in Texas is the predictor of what's going to happen nationally. And you talked about that before when you guys were having your primary and the impact of voter suppression laws, Jamarr, on the primary turnout, and also challenges to the election results and challenges to ballots. So I want to talk about that quickly, but I want to talk to folks about this is something that happened and people weren't paying attention to it. And I'm going to share the screen. Those no-knock warrants, the SCOTUS rude, and what basically is allowed to happen now, and here's the map here, is within 100 miles of the border zone. And y'all have to be aware, a border is the coastline. It's not just Canada. It's not just Mexico we're bordering. The coast is a border. Within 100 miles of that border, they're allowing no-knock warrants. That means that they can come to your house without a warrant and say, hey, we think there's an illegal immigrant here, and no one's illegal. We think there's someone here who's seeking asylum, and we don't believe that. They could come into your house. This is very dangerous. Very dangerous. And as this map says, nearly 2 out of 3 people 3 Americans live within this 100-mile border zone, a lot of urban areas, which are majority Black and brown. And people really have to understand this is all part of this bigger picture of eliminating our human rights. No one should be able to come in your house without a warrant. And these are very dangerous times. And I just wanted to point that out. If y'all got something to say about that, go ahead and jump in and say it. If not, I want Jamarr to talk about what the hell is happening in Texas. And I kind of like saying that if y'all ain't noticed that. So
I just have one point. Most of the Democratic controlled cities are along the water line or close to the water.
Mm-hmm.
And that really impacts our democratic cities. I'm looking at that, and within that 100 miles, you got Charleston and Raleigh and Atlanta and Miami, like all up and down that area. You're attacking communities that have democratic leadership. And we just gotta going right back to the strategy, y'all. We gotta push back on this stuff. This is ridiculous. Oh, we can't hear you, Marilyn.
Lord, I'm in a new place, y'all. Forgive me. That's why I wanted to bring this out. So thank you for mentioning that, Brandon. Los Angeles, San Francisco, major cities are within a 100-mile zone. And guess what? They know this. They know this because their strategy, they're thinking so far ahead of us. We have got to catch up and surpass them. And that takes strategy, as you said, Brandon. Jamarr, tell us what's happening in Texas. I know, but I want to know more because we're running out of time. We're about 8 minutes. Last week, the Texas GOP met, and their platform was scary. Authoritarian, taking us back to the 1800s. They attacked everybody. They made sure they got everybody they could attack in that platform. But I don't think people really realize the consequences nationally of that because Texas is such a huge influence. So your thoughts, your opinion, Jamarr? I want to hear that because you were there on the ground.
Texas is a huge influence. But the thing that people may or may not know, we're the 9th largest economy in the world. So a lot of billions of dollars flows in and out of Texas. And they use that as that economic power as a leverage point to advance their political issues. So that's what you're seeing. I mean, I'm trying to keep it short and sweet because I know we're wrapping up here. Like you said, they've attacked everybody. Again, it goes back to Maya Angelou. When they show you who they are, believe them. But you'll be surprised. You've had county chairs, precinct chairs resign after that platform was passed at the end of the day. And so what they're doing is, yes, they're going as far to the right as they can go. And they're wanting to, and there are a lot of these Texas Republicans that want to run for president. Greg Abbott will get up and run for president on these things. And so do you think if he goes to Alabama, Mississippi, these other racist states, that they're not going to jump on board and be like, yeah, no. I mean, they said they will secede from the union, and we have a large enough economy that they could do it. Our economy is bigger than some country in the world in Texas. And so that's what you're seeing here is they're using that power, and what keeps them in office is, and what we've been fighting as the Democratic Party is 135 of our counties are considered rural out of 254. That's more than half, almost, more than half of our counties. And what people underestimate is because we have Austin, San Antonio, Dallas, Houston, that Texas is this metro area. Texas is mostly suburban and rural. And so when we haven't invested in the suburban and the rural communities, and what we've saw by the census is a lot of these cities have gotten so priced out, a lot of people are moving to the counties around Dallas and Fort Worth and Houston, et cetera. And so that's been a huge part of our strategy is closing the margins in rural areas and then increasing our voter registration work, our voter contact work, our voter protection work in our major areas, but also in the areas surrounding that. And so that's, absolutely important to ensuring that we have a fighting chance in this election. We have one of the best slates that I think we could have in recent years. You know, obviously we're headed by Beto O'Rourke, and he's been all over the state, and he's here in Austin, coming into Austin later today. And we've seen those polls close. The more radical they've gotten, people are paying attention. But I hate that it takes for them to get so radical for us to wake up, because that gets us to a space where we're not just organizing, we're organizing to defend. We're organizing from behind, right? And so that's what we are doing. I mean, when we started this race with Greg Abbott in October, we were 15 points down. We were looking at the polls and everybody, y'all can't win, y'all don't have a chance. And the last poll that came out last week, we're within 5 points. We're seeing the polls close because we've seen folks like Greg Abbott, Ken Paxton, who is indicted, by the way. He was indicted 5 years ago, hadn't gone to trial yet. That's our attorney general. But he had the nerve to go to the Supreme Court and try to overturn election results. But that's another topic. But they're corrupt. They've shown corruption. They've shown evil. They've shown hatred. And at some point, we have been able to go across the state and challenge people that this is not who we are. This election in Texas is not just about Democrats and Republicans. This is about good versus evil. And that's what we've been campaigning in the state. This is good versus evil. Do you want them to take your tax dollars and put them into private school? Do you want them to let your children be in harm's way? Where literally the governor is holding the Department of Public Safety. They won't even release the report for the Uvalde shooting. So our Democratic senators, we worked with our Democratic senators to file a lawsuit against DPS. So we're taking action where we can. You know, people say the party don't do nothing. Listen, people have their hot takes, but I believe that, you know, we're doing what we can, you know, within the capacity we have. And so at the end of the day, this election for us is good versus evil. And how does good versus evil show up in government? And the Republicans have shown in every turn that they will turn away your rights, they will dismantle communities, and they will restrict access to opportunity. And they've shown that. And we've been able to talk about that, you know, throughout. And so they've gone extreme. They were so extreme that they lost hundreds of thousands of dollars in sponsorships to their convention. They were so extreme that they had the George Brown Convention Center in Houston, and they couldn't fill the auditorium. They're so extreme that the governor didn't even show up to the convention. He held his speech at another event down the street. Like, they are in disarray. And so as the Democratic Party, we have built a voter registration program, voter protection program. We're building our coordinated campaign to do our voter contact. Our candidates are going all over the state, you know, urban, suburban, rural, and we're not leaving a stone unturned, you know, at the end of the day. So, you know, we get caught up in the party don't do this and the party don't do that. You get connected to the DNC. People think I run the DNC some days. I got a letter in the mail at the office the other day. You need to tell Biden, I don't run the White House. And so these are the things that are happening. But, you know, they've gotten extreme, but our people have been smart. I think we're being smart about how we navigate those resources. But what we want to show people before we are even elected, we're showing you with the power and capacity that we do have, this is what we're willing to do. So if we have to sue the governor, we'll do that. You know, we sued the Secretary of State's off. You know, we do what we have to do to make sure that we can protect the most vulnerable communities in the state.
I'm glad to see that you guys are taking the fight to them. I think that's an example of other states. We cannot let any opportunity go by where they are not challenged. And that's what I talk about when I say don't accommodate. We've got to have elected officials willing to take the fight. That is not going low, folks. That is taking the fight to them from a moral high place. You can do that. You can do that.
It's not hyper partisan. We literally are saying 19 children were shot, 2 teachers were shot and killed. We have a right to know what happened in these communities to make sure. So we've also stepped out and called for a special session because if they believe that they want safety and all the school safety and all this stuff. Well, call a special session, pass the legislation before the kids go to school. They won't do it because we've got to call them on that moral ground. Like I said, it's good versus evil, because it's one thing to get up and preach that you love God and you love children. It's another thing. That when you're not doing it, because if you love those children so much and care about their safety, you would call a session. But what they did is they put together special legislative committees. And so these committees are supposed to review everything and then come and make recommendations. So one of the recommendations that the speaker put up was we need to invest $100 million into mental health. What we went on a campaign around the state and said is, well, what the speaker is not telling you is last session, they cut $212 million from the mental health department and moved it to the Operation Lone Star, to the same thing that you're talking about with the border. So don't preach to me when their kids have gotten shot and killed in school and teachers have gotten shot and killed in school. Now you care about mental health, because they've been painting this issue as a mental health issue. One, you cannot cut the money that young man who shot those kids would even have access. Number two, what they won't tell you is they reduced the age to acquire a gun last session from 21 to 18. So you can get a gun before you can drink in Texas. Number three, what they won't tell you is they passed permitless carry, which means they got rid of background checks. They got rid of the trainings. They got rid of the accountability. They did all of this. And then Uvalde happened. Everybody's like, oh my God, what are we supposed to do? And let's pray. And then 3 days after Uvalde, they went to the NRA convention. Good versus evil. It's in plain writing. I don't know how else. I think that's it's
very plain.
How else can we say it? They do it right in our face, and we just sit there.
It's very plain.
We can't sit there.
It's very plain. So that means we need to pull up our big girl pants and our big boy pants and get to work and stop whining. And I'm just laying it off. We've been on this show for 2 years now, and we've been saying this and educating folks. And I'm tired, folks. Y'all need to step up from local, state, and national and see what's going on. And you are correct, Jamarr. And we've been saying this. This is good versus evil. That is not hyperbole. Oh, I'm having a moment. Hyperbole. It is not. It's right in front of us. It is right in front of us. And we need to step it up and pull up our pants and get to work. Brandon, I'm going to let you wrap it up. Jamarr, thank you for joining us. I know you got a lot going on in Texas and you're going to have to go. But y'all, we're going to replay this in a few minutes. It's a little bit after 4, so it's not going to be quite starting at 4 o'clock, but it will be starting as soon as within 2 or 3 minutes of us ending the show. But Brandon, I'm going to let you wrap up the show because you tend to be Mr. Calm between the three of us.
Well, you see, my daughter just came in the room. I think they want to go outside or something. And it's perfect timing. You know, at the end of the day, her generation is exactly what we're fighting for. If we take our eye off of that purpose for what we're being called to do in this moment, we're not gonna meet the moment where we're supposed to. You know, her well-being, the well-being of her children, her ability to determine what she does with her life, her body, her future, is all at stake. And we're at that crossroads right now where if we don't take action, if we don't correct, course correct, we're going to lose the ability to dictate how we move forward and how our society evolves instead of regresses. So I just hope everyone that was watching today takes something from our conversation and turns that into action. And that's all I got. I love you guys. I'm glad the three of us was able to get on today. Great conversation.
Run off this Tuesday, right? It's this Tuesday.
Yes, it is.
Everybody, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. We have a United States Senate runoff in the Democratic Party and the Republicans is superintendent of education. So we hope that you pick the right one to vote in.
Yep. And if you live in Florence County or Kingstree or Berkeley, most likely there is a state house race there. I already told you how I felt about Caesar McKnight and what he's done, contrary to our community. I implore you to vote for Roger Kirby so we can hold Caesar McKnight accountable by sending his butt home. So, and I stand on that 10 toes down, because if we don't hold him accountable, he's going to get right back in the state house and push forward poisonous legislation that hurts our communities. So it's time to hold these folks accountable. Get his tail up out of there, and y'all be blessed.
Well, not be blessed, child.
I'm just talking and I was muted.
Oh.
All right. I heard you, Jamarr. Thank you, Jamarr. Thank you, Brandon. Love you guys. It's always good to get together with you once a month to talk politics. And we're going to talk again next month, y'all, on the third Sunday. If we don't forget, but I don't think Juneteenth is happening next month. We forgot because we were all doing Juneteenth stuff. And I remembered like Tuesday. I'm like, what? Did I forget something? Totally forgot it. Good to see you guys. Thank you. Go out, do the good work. And remember to vote, everybody. This Tuesday, run off. Go vote. Go vote this Tuesday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. All right, Jamarr, keep up the good work out in Texas.
Thank you.
All right. And Brandon, I'll be seeing you later, too. I know you hopping around the state also. We'll
Absolutely.
talk to you guys.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
All right, everybody. As usual, we are here talking politics talk. Always good to see everybody. I'm going to hop off so we can repeat this at, well, slightly after 4, but we'll see you on Wednesday when we do public health awareness. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. We'll see you later.